Hi everyone, and welcome back to Cam Garage. Today I'm going to be breaking down my 2006 NC Miata. I've had my NC now for just over 5 years. I am at my anniversary this month. We're currently in January of 2025. What I would like to do is break this down by the parts, the cost, and the other associated details with those parts. Many of the parts that you hear were used parts. I'll make sure to call those out appropriately. As for my objective when I bought the car, so I wanted a fun, streetable driving vehicle specifically for canyon carving or mountain runs during the weekends. I do not do track days, not because I don't want to, but I've never had the ability or the capability of doing so. Now that I have my NC built the way that I do, outside of a roll bar, I believe that I could do it pretty easily and it would be a lot of fun. I'm going to break this video into 3 segments. I'm going to do a pre-engine swap, and post-engine swap. The reason for that is there were differences in how I spent money, specifically at the time of the engine swap, that we will cover in a minute why that is caveated. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. So going into the pre-engine swap. Vehicle, I actually purchased it from the original owner. The car was $2,000. At the time that I bought it, I recognized full well in January of 2020 that that was a great deal. That's why I flew all the way down to Tampa to go and bring it back. It had a check engine light on for a bad catalytic converter. It had a valve cover gasket leak. The interior and exterior were not in great overall shape, and the air conditioning didn't work. Aside from those issues, there was no rust or other forms of significant wear on the vehicle, outside of what I've already listed. So immediately living in Fulton County at the time, in Atlanta, Georgia, I had to pass emissions. That said, I needed a catalytic converter replaced on the upstream side. The header job on that car is not a fun job, but I elected to go through and do it. I found a PPE catted header for $300 on Facebook Marketplace that I had to get shipped to me from somewhere in the Midwest. Don't recall because this was a few years ago. I bought that within 1 month of purchasing the car in February of 2020. That specific PPE catted header is no longer sold to the best of my knowledge. It worked fine, but again, I ended up getting rid of that later on. At the time I replaced that, I also put on O2 sensors, both upstream and downstream. I went with cheaper aftermarket ones from Amazon. Generally, I would not advise someone to do this. That is what I did at the time. If you're doing a DIY, I don't think it's that big a deal. If you are paying someone to do it, have them do it with the OEM parts. That was $40. I noticed that the suspension was pretty worn out at 148,000 miles. I found some Mazda club suspension for the NC Miata down the street from me and bought it for $200. I put it on same day and had the car aligned. Again, I'm not going to include the alignments. I have 3 or 4 alignments over the car's history. The next item was the Sony XAV AX100 stereo head unit. That was $400, including the backup camera, the wiring, and everything else that I threw at it. It may have been slightly over, slightly below that. In general, that's been an excellent unit. I've actually put that in 3 separate cars. I have found that it even works better than some of the newer Sony units that are out there. Next was a Morimoto shift knob. I put that in August of 2020. I paid a grand total of $35 from Amazon. Not a big ticket. Next, this one's a bit interesting, was the BRZ seats. I actually had a friend that had a Subaru BRZ. I sat in it, I loved how they sat, and I said, you know what, I'm going to custom fab these up to sit in my car. In November of 2020, I went ahead and bought a pair on eBay and fabricated with my hands. Make sure to wear gloves whenever you're grinding metal. I had to have a dermatologist actually remove the metal shrapnel from my hands after this. But I had everything put in the car for $350. I ran those BRZ seats until I did the engine swap. You'll hear why in a moment. I found locally a Racing Beat rear sway bar. That was $60. That was in February of 2021. Again, that was a used part here locally. Next were the WeatherTech floor mats, used locally for $50. That included both passenger side and driver side. No issues with wear or anything. Next, we have the NC Club limited slip differential. This was probably one of the single biggest things that I did to the vehicle. I had been looking passively for a limited slip and actually found one locally about 20 minutes north of me for the grand sum of $400. I drove up there, and over the course of about 2 days, it is not as easy of a job as many of the people in this community leads you to think to put that LSD in, but I did go ahead and get it done. Night and day difference between having it and not having it. One wheel peel is never a fun thing. Next, we have the carpet and interior trim. Again, my car had about 150,000 miles at this point, and this is in August of 2022, so about 2 years after purchase. I said, you know what? This interior is not great. Let's go find a used interior from a low mileage car. I did for $200. I had new carpet. I applied more sound deadening underneath too, and I did some of the NC2 interior plastics. There are a few minor differences. I did not swap out the center console, sadly. It's the only thing I wish I had. It's padded in the NC2s and NC3s, so something for you to keep in mind. Next, I have the Goodwin Racing Super Q muffler. That was $350. I found it locally here on Facebook Marketplace. Again, this is here in Atlanta. That was in August of 2022 as well. Last item that I had before the engine swap was a VersaTune N1 tune from Fab9. This is what actually initiated my relationship with Fab9 Tuning up in Nashville, Tennessee. That VersaTune tune I ran on the car for about 1 year. Didn't have any issues. It was easy enough to put on, but that was $350. Transitioning on. This is where the big break kind of happens. In November of 2023, my car suffered a issue where it would not go into gear anymore. At the time, I actually thought that the clutch had blown. Come to find out later, it was actually the clutch slave cylinder had actually blown. Again, it had about 160,000 miles on it at that point. So I said, I've always wanted to do the 2.5. Now would be a great opportunity to go ahead and go through with that. Before I start into the engine swap phase, I want to make sure that my intention is clear, as I really treated this differently than everything else for the car. To this point, I've had a lot of used parts that you've seen thrown at the vehicle. When it came time to actually doing this, I wanted to make sure it was as reliable and overbuilt as possible to ensure that I was avoiding potential downfalls or immediate service in the near future. As you will see, no dime was spared on my 2.5 liter. It was not fun, as this was the most expensive project I've ever gone through. All right, so Fab9 did the work. I ordered a number of these parts from Rock Auto in advance, had them shipped to Fab9 up in Nashville for them to install on the car. They told me it would be a bit cheaper. Thank you, Fab9, for actually following through with that. All right, first, we have the OEM starter. That was $163. The slave cylinder, which was actually the failure point, that was $25. The Clutchmaster cylinder, $40. The CSF performance radiator from Fab9, $330. The Duratec rear main seal carrier, new rear main seal, $37. Exidy Stage 1 clutch, 6-speed, $406. Exidy forged steel lightweight flywheel, $324. I'll come back to that in a minute. Progress adjustable front sway bar, $250. Remember, I had done the rear a couple of years earlier when I found a cheap used one. When they offered to do the front one when the front subframe was out, I figured it would be a great time. Next, we have the Duratec MZR balance shaft delete kit, $36. The water pump, wanted to make sure that all my pumps, seals, everything, again, you'll see that I did all of that. was all done. That was $57. Duratec MZR Performance Camshaft Stage 2, $600. Roadster Sport MX5 Competition Motor Mounts, $190. Duratec 2.5 liter accessory belt, $37. The tuning from Fab9 was $179. The installation labor was $1,400. That was for them to actually perform the service of putting the engine into the car and everything else associated. Continental Extreme Contact 215/45/17s tires. Again, if you really want to remove this from the overall cost, you could. $625. Brom Racing Seats. Thank you, Fab9, for selling me your used ones. $700. Exhaust gasket manifold, $18. Oil and coolant, $59. NC Club wheels. Fab9 sold me a used set that they had there. Thank you. $150. Roadster Sport Max Power 1.8-inch header. This replaced the PPE header that I had put on the vehicle a couple of years prior. $510. Planted seat mounts, $200. Amazon Special Seat Sliders, $100. That was driver and passenger. Öhlins Road and Track Suspension, that was expensive. $1,710. Roadster Sport MX5 Tower X brace. This is the big shock tower brace that I have over the engine. $315. Coolant expansion tank. This was not the Moroso one. This was actually an Amazon knockoff of the Moroso. I had already spent so much money at this point that I just needed to try and save something. $110. All right, so that goes through everything from the formal engine swap. For the post-engine swap, at this point, I had basically spent every penny that I had allocated towards the car. I really did not want to spend anything else. That last phase was a lot of money for somebody that does not do this professionally. I went through, and in the post-engine swap phase, I've only done 3 things. This was in November of 2024. I had to get a new starter put in. Why did I have to get a new starter put in if I had already called out that I had bought one from Fab9? There were 2 or 3 parts that Fab9 did not put on the car. The starter was included in that. The starter failed 1 year, almost to the day, after putting the 2.5 liter in the car. I tried to do the job. The accessibility to the starter in that car is not ideal. I ended up having the vehicle towed, had a local shop do it, $300 to get it done. Now you're getting into the shifter. The shifter at 160,000 miles, 165 technically, in 2025 of last year, failed. I said, you know what, let's just go ahead and redo this. Upon actually removing the shifter from the car, the plastic that holds the 6 feet in place had completely failed. It had literally disintegrated in place. I spent $60 for a new shift knob. I wanted the Fiat 124 Spider shift knob. Looks great in there, by the way. So, going back through everything, I just covered a ton of information. In total, what did I spend? I spent, including the cost of purchasing the car, $14,083. That sounds like a tremendous amount of money. If you think about it in the grand scheme of things, that's really very, very little. There are very few cars out there that I believe can perform the way that mine can for shy of 15 grand, and to have as many of those components that have been updated, revised, or upgraded over the last 5 years for a small, measly 12 grand or so outside of the cost of purchasing the vehicle. Some common questions. How much did I actually spend with Fab9 when they did the formal build? I spent $6,733 at that point. That includes the suspension. One thing that I did not go into was the importance of doing the suspension when you do add that much power. Upon getting my car back, and again, it was on the Bilstein Club suspension, it was literally pulling the car up, not doing a wheelie, but the sensation of doing a wheelie when you would floor it. That said, it was very, very necessary for me to go ahead and do those Öhlins when it was time. How much money did I spend on used parts for my 2006 NC Miata over the last 5 years? I spent $5,220, including a whole bunch of stuff. Great things can be found on the used market. Not all things, though, should be put on your car from the used market. What is my favorite modification that I have done to my 2006 NC Miata? The Goodwin Racing Super Q muffler and the Exity lightweight flywheel. The Super Q muffler added a tone and driving experience that my car did not otherwise have. I already had the header in place, but truly opening up the sound to hear the way that it could be was one of my absolute favorite modifications. The Exity lightweight flywheel was also one of my favorites because of how quickly that engine revs up and how quickly it revs down, allowing for maximum driving dynamics when you were driving this thing in the mountains. It also leads into one of my least favorite things with the vehicle, which is also that Exity lightweight flywheel. The daily ability of the car was very much hurt by adding that lightweight flywheel. Fortunately, I have another car. If you do not have another car, do not do the Exity lightweight flywheel. I could not recommend that less if it is your daily vehicle. It's more difficult to start in first gear. It's far more difficult to go into reverse, and the overall driving experience is hurt on a day-to-day basis. All right, what do I regret not doing at the time of my 2.5 liter swap? Ironically, I would say not doing a turbo kit, but I think I would be lying. I really wanted to make sure that I maintained reliability for the car, and I feel that I did. Outside of that one starter issue in 2024, I have not had a single issue with my 2.5 liter that I put in. In all seriousness, I really have no regrets for things that were not done at the time of the 2.5 swap. What are my future ambitions for my 2.5 liter NC Miata? If I'm being honest, there's only one thing, that is tires. The 215 Extreme Contacts that I have on the car right now do not meet the requirements of what I have in the car. When I go up and do mountain driving, I find that the car meets its limits pretty quickly, especially when you have cars that have more grip. Even though it doesn't have much weight up there, it's really, really important to make sure that you do a bit wider tire. I need to upgrade the size. I would like to do a 17x8 or a 17x8.5 inch wheel with a 235 or 245 width tire on the vehicle. Do I ever intend to sell my NC? It's a tricky question, and if I had to be honest, I would say the answer is yes. Space and practicality would probably be the biggest two things. Obviously, I do have my 4Runner, but I would love to have something that is a bit more comfortable on a day-to-day basis. The manual transmission is excellent. The powertrain is excellent. The problem is not the car. The problem is that you outgrow how visceral you want a car to be on a day-to-day basis. I love how it drives. I love how it rides. But it does sometimes feel as if it is a chore to go and get into what I've essentially built as a race car. If you have the financial means to have a second or even third car, I think that having a 2.5 liter cam and going crazy is one of the best experiences that you can have for the money. However, if you do not have that second or third car and this is your primary, I think I would advise you to stick with the 2 liter, keep it on stock suspension, and really enjoy the car as it is. Maybe upgrade the suspension, maybe just put a muffler on it. Once you go down the slippery path of heavily modifying a vehicle, you are removing a lot of the daily capabilities that that car would otherwise have. I don't regret doing it to my car. I wish I had something that was a bit more comfortable on a day-to-day basis to drive. So now that I've walked you through my 2.5 liter NC, let me know what questions that you have. Let me know what you would love to see me do to the car. Let me know if you have a recommendation for maybe what a good replacement would be. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but otherwise, thank you for coming to Cam's Garage, and I'll continue updating on the channel. Please subscribe.